Hey, I'm James from Smoking Dad Barbecue, and today I'm doing a 1 year later review of my Smoke North Carlisle offset smoker to answer the question why I most definitely would buy it again, but also why I wouldn't. So since it's all relevant to answering the question, if I could go back in time to a year ago right now, October 2021, when I ordered my Smoke North Carlisle offset, let me bring you up to speed in about 60 seconds or so what I was looking for at the time and how that directly plays into would I make the exact same decision today as I did 12 months ago. So what I was looking for when shopping for an offset, right out of the gate, I wanted a real offset. If we're going to do this, I don't want to get something that I'm running in charcoal. As you can tell looking around, I have lots of other charcoal or pellet or even wood burning fire pits that I can play with. And so if we're going to do an offset, I wanted to do it proper. So that immediately eliminated ones. I have a couple friends with YouTube channels and they're constantly trying to get the right balance of charcoal, adding some wood chunks. You go through all the same amount of work, or maybe in some cases more work than you do on a proper offset, and you just don't get that same result. Secondly, I was looking for a direct flow Texas style offset. I've seen lots of different permutations of baffles, reverse flow, direct flow, and any that I've used, once you get below that 250 gallons, I find they just don't breathe as well as what you get in sort of that 500 or 1,000 gallon offset. And so to me, these are kind of features that don't really directly apply or benefit the patio sized backyard offset. So that direct flow characteristic was another signature Texas style offset in my buying criteria, which this one and its bigger brother, the Huron, both have. In this search, this led me to looking at pits that were coming out. In fact, the first pit that I put my name on the waiting list for was the Franklin one that I waited for a year before getting confirmation that I had made the list, but at this time I was already half a year into enjoying my Smoke North offset. But as the time went on from when that was first announced to as some of the reviews came out, there was a few things I wasn't thrilled about, like the fact that you don't have an adjustable damper on our smokestack, so you have no choice but to run that wide open. This might be good for the uninitiated, but this really eliminates or reduces some ability to control our temperatures. Second, I didn't love, they don't use a fresh steel that's rolled for either my door here on the cook chamber or the 3/8 steel that I have over my firebox. And I saw in a few videos that Mad Scientist and others have posted where you get some smoke leaks either on your draft door because what you've done is you've cut this out, laser cut it out, and then you try and put a little flange behind that just doesn't seal as well. Or likewise on your door, you laser cut that out, but after some heat cycles, it's just not fitting properly and not closing. So that that was quickly considered and then not considered when I was looking for an offset. So a year later, there are 5 parts of my shopping list that I absolutely wouldn't change. I would keep exactly the same. So a quick recap, if you're in the market, the 5 things I was looking for that I think are just as relevant or important a year later as before I had made my first ever offset purchase. First one we already covered, which is using fresh rolled steel for the door and or for our firebox so that we don't get any of those smoke leaks, or unfortunately, like Mad Scientist showed with the Franklin pit, the door jamming because it's laser cut using the same steel. This saves some time and maybe money, but it just comes with feature or function gap that I don't want to wrestle with, where I can't get the door and control the temperatures, or I have smoke leaks, and I'm not getting the precise controls that I want. The second on my wish list was the type of steel. So I wanted North American domestic steel, which is what everything here, 304 stainless or domestic steel, as well as the properties itself. So this is 1/4 inch. I didn't want anything less than a 1/4 inch. So it's a 1/4 inch all the way through the cook chamber, including our semi-insulated firebox where you have sort of 2 levels. So that's a 1/2 inch. And our door being 3/8. And the other part of this, I wanted it to be the first thing that ever touched this steel to be food or barbecue that we are cooking, and not having spent life as an oil drum or gas container or anything else that maybe isn't food safe. So there's a couple question marks with some of the pits that I was looking into at the time. The third, I already covered briefly, but I expand on this, is the firebox being semi-insulated. We get nice hot summers or even fall days like today, but in the dead of winter, anything that's not a semi-insulated firebox, we run the risk of just going through so much fuel and we can't keep our temperature stable. Or if you go fully insulated. I have lots of experience with grills or Kamados where sometimes what we're fighting against is they are just too energy efficient for their own good. And this semi-insulated firebox a year later does exactly what I'd hoped for, where it gives us a bit of the best of both worlds, where I can maintain my fires in my coal bed, but at the same time, I always see open flames, regardless of the weather. Dead of summer, dead of winter, we are burning a nice clean fire, and I'm getting amazing results in the process. The last two things that I was looking for is maybe an overlooked one, a common one, but you can see even where I have, the pit here today, is these 8-inch caster wheels. So a lot of pits of this size or price point are using a 5-inch wheel versus an 8-inch wheel. At 700 pounds, it takes a bit of a heave, but I am able to move this around with these wheels no problem. Having helped friends before on smaller diameter wheels, it becomes a 2-person job really quickly. And since we like to be flexible with something this size in terms of where we place it in our yard, especially when we have guests or kids over, being able to move it freely was a big feature then, and one I absolutely would not be willing to go backwards on, having some experience of heaving this around myself. Finally, this is the price and shipping. And so it works much better, like many of my followers in the States, to bring things from Canada in. Your dollar has an advantage and shipping rates have an advantage than they do for me and my border tax deficit of trying to bring some pits, which is why some of these that are made just an hour away from me are ending up in places like Austin and all over southern United States, where when I try and bring something from southern US into Canada, the price can double or triple. As I quickly found out when I was looking at the mill scale pit, I got a quote, and I believe it was with shipping all in, getting near about 14 grand to get it to my door. So that Canadian border is a no-go sometimes for bringing things from the US in. So lucky if you happen to be the other way, where you could take advantage of your better dollar and bring things from Canada to you. Let's move into, after a year under the belt, a couple things I've noticed and might start to be what I would tweak moving forward. So with a year under the belt, here's a couple of things on the wish list that I might change if I were able to go back in time. So let's start with the firebox and the size of splits. Now you can absolutely address some of these problems if you're willing to sort of get in and process each split. So from a farm, these are from Furtado Farms. This is oak. I often get oak, hickory, and or maple most often from Furtado Farms, because they come naturally seasoned and already broken down into about 12 inches in size, and this is maybe getting about 4 inches or so in width. So this is a great size for a backyard style offset. But with an 18-inch firebox, I find I wish I had a little bit more space for controlling the fire. So to maintain about 275 degrees in this offset, once I have my coal bed going, I often let that log sort of break down, break it apart, and then lay another one on top of it. And I sort of keep flipping direction, and one log is enough for those temperatures. If you start to go with more logs or more fire, the temperature will just shoot up like crazy, and you're actually drawing those flames in with the direct flow over top of our food. And that means we can start getting a crispy looking brisket on the outside hours before it's actually probe tender on the inside. And so a little bit larger of a firebox, instead of 18 inches, if we were to get up into the 20s like what the Huron has, that would give me the ability of building a fire, being able to use some of these flat pieces and sort of stack a few more pieces on top and knock down those flames, so we continue to get clean combustion but without getting some of that fire being drawn into the cook chamber. It would also give me the ability of moving a little bit further away. So while this is 18 inches, if I have a log here, I really only get a little bit of room to be able to pull the fire further away from my direct flow inlet into the cook chamber. So that would be something that would make life a lot easier in hindsight. The second thing that would be a little bit easier is the water pan. And I was really attracted to this feature. I still think it's clever, is that when you open up your cook chamber, you have a little shelf here that can hold a small water pan. And so while this works really well at vaporizing the water, it's kind of an awkward spot to reach and refill, especially when it's hot. So you can't refill it quickly and easily from the side without removing it. And this just adds time. And that whole, if you're looking, you ain't cooking, comes into into play here where that is not really a large enough water pan, nor does it do anything to help me block some of those harsher hot flames coming out of the firebox. So what I've been doing more often than not lately is just placing a larger metal water pan right in front of the firebox. So this will be more than enough to last an entire cook. I just did a couple racks of ribs recently, and I still had plenty of water when it was all said and done. Same thing with the brisket. So this not only gives us the ability to keep our door closed and run much longer without needing to open that dome and let all that great smoke and heat escape, it also gives us the ability at settling down some of those hot fire chemical compounds coming out of the firebox and make sure that everything that we get for our food is exactly on the money. So last but not least on my wish list a year later comes to do with how we warm up our splits. So those split warming shelves inside the firebox work really well, but the challenge is being 18 inches. Often the fire is so close to where I'm warming them, my splits will end up combusting just sitting, being that close to the fire, and then all of a sudden you see your temperatures are going up. So being able to, again, have a little bit more distance or a bit of a flat spot on top of our firebox to warm them up. But this one, of course, balances fine being flat, but not everything is processed nice and smooth like this one piece that I grabbed. Or I love cooking everything outside. So whether we wanted to sear a steak or have a pot warming some sauce, you can see that kind of precariously is balanced on there. But when we are working with hot food or sauces and oils, I don't like cleaning that up off of the patio. And one of the things that blew me away is the versatility of an offset versus the one-trick pony. I put it in my mind mentally, but this does an amazing job on a steak. But outside of searing it caveman directly in the coals as I've done, having a bit of an option for a flat top to either make storing our wood splits and preheating them up there a little bit less precarious as I've knocked some of those off, or if you have a charcoal chimney and you don't want that to fall off and be picking up charcoal everywhere, or a saucepan, would just add a ton of utility to being able to do a complete meal, everything start to finish on one grill. So to answer the question, would I buy this exact same offset again? And as you can tell, there is a ton that I absolutely love about my Smoke North Carlisle offset smoker. And what I think gives me more joy than anything is people's reaction to the food. I have a hard time explaining the difference here in smoke. I've done head-to-head against my Kamado style grills, whether it be brisket or more recently ribs, and hands down what everyone has been picking as their favorite has come off of my offset, which I take as a challenge on the things I need to work on to try and improve the smoke quality that comes out of my Kamado. And it's not that the smoke's not there, it's different. Maybe this is a bad way of explaining it, but instead of smoke being a level of 1 to 10, where I'm evaluating, how smoky is something that comes off the offset or how smoky is something that comes off of my Kamado or any other style grill, it almost changes smoke to a seasoning. So I might even say in some ways it's less smoky, but it's adding this seasoning that I just haven't been able to recreate to the same degree on any other style grill that I've cooked with before. So for that, I absolutely love it and I'm having a blast. Next, I love the company, the brand here, Smoke North. Well, this is the most expensive smoker grill that I have ever purchased. I have no doubt that this is one that I could put in my will and leave for my children, and they could leave for their children's children. This is built to last a lifetime, and I think that reflects in the price. I even had a few local welders try and quote me, and one who ultimately bought a Smoke North offset themselves, and they told me they can't make this pit for this money. So while it's expensive and it took a long time to pay that off, I feel good sleeping at night knowing that I really couldn't get it made for anything less, and it will last generations. I also appreciate that they're a small company. They listen to feedback or ideas and suggestions. And one of the ones that I noticed when I first got it is just missing this work surface. And so when you want to pull ribs out or your brisket, I'll mention there's a couple offsets that that have sliding trays. This is good when you're playing with it at the demo station and it's brand new, but when you have ribs and brisket that are dripping grease, as soon as you pull that out, it has nowhere to go but straight down, and that is hard to get off of your patio stones. So having a bit of a fold up work surface like this is a great idea. I'm really glad I suggested it. I'm even happier that Smoke North listened and included it as a product upgrade. And if I could be even happier on top of happy, is that they took that feedback as a thank you and gave my followers a save 25% link that I put down in my description for any pit upgrade. So if you happen to be in the market for a pit upgrade, whether it's extra thermometers, this gauge, cover, or anything like that, that you can save 25%, which I think is super cool. So coming into the area where if there's a hesitation or something that I would do different, it's the size. I originally went with this size offset because I'm never going to put a 250, 500 gallon offset. That's just not going to happen. We don't live on a farm and we don't cook for that many people. This is more than enough space for our family and gathering. So I can get sort of 5 racks of ribs, you know, front to back this way. I can get a brisket, maybe 2 smaller briskets. So this is enough at 60 gallons. Maybe I could use a little bit more space for a couple racks of ribs, but that firebox that you get on the Huron, the larger size, the big brother to this one, is I think we're gaining about an extra 6 inches in the cook chamber, a couple extra inches in the firebox. So it's only a foot or so longer than the total dimensions of my Carlisle offset. And what led me to this size was artist renderings for our outdoor kitchen area. And I originally wanted to make sure that I could fit within that. The reality of fitting within that is you need to be able to get around your smoker, and the amount of smoke that comes out of the stack, even if it's nice, clean burning smoke, you really don't want to be in a covered area. And so not only was this really impractical to try and slide it into the corner here like that rendering showed, the reality of the smoke just collecting and sitting stagnant in the top of my roof means I don't ever do it. And since I'm no longer confined by that original space that that artist rendering had me looking for, I could swing a foot. Don't love the idea of having to add or lose another foot in the backyard, but I think for the fire management and just a little bit more space, if we wanted to do a couple extra racks of ribs or a couple extra things, I could probably justify it a year later. So no buyer regret here, absolutely happy with the decision. But if I was doing it again, I think I might look a little bit harder at the big brother, the Huron, than I did a year ago. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. More importantly, I hope we can find a way, despite internet barriers, for you to experience or taste some of the food that I've been cooking off of this offset. It is just in a league of its own. And if it can't be at my house, maybe a friend's house can share it with you, because it really does give us the benchmark. And that was a design goal when I bought my offset, is I wanted a benchmark. It's so easy to get in group think and sort of say, okay, I've really mastered the craft. And then you go to, you know, anywhere in Texas, top 50 monthly places, and you try some food and you're like, this is different than what I'm cooking. And so having an offset as a benchmark to help me challenge myself to find better ways of getting great results, regardless of whatever type of cooker you might be joining me on, was a design goal for this channel. And I've been super pleased that this has absolutely lived up and exceeded my expectations when it comes to that regard. And I hope you get a chance to taste it too, so that you can balance your cooking and your goals and your results to what it is that you're after. That's it for today though. I'm James from Soaking Dad Barbecue signing off. Remember, don't be afraid to fire it up.